The first time I heard them, I thought it was just the wind. My name is Lena Holloway, and I am a freelance illustrator from Portland. At 34, I'd spent most of my adult life in cramped city apartments, dealing with noise complaints and rent increases. When my great-aunt Lillian died and left me her farmhouse in Baraboo, Wisconsin, it seemed like a gift from the universe. Space to work, quiet to heal from a messy divorce. Time to figure out what came next. The house was older than I'd expected, built in 1892, according to the deed, with creaking floorboards and windows that rattled in their frames. Aunt Lillian had been a recluse for the last 20 years of her life, and it showed. The wallpaper was peeling. The kitchen hadn't been updated since the 1960s, and there was a persistent smell of lavender and something else I couldn't identify. But it was mine, and it was quiet, until it wasn't. The scratching started on my third night. I was upstairs in what used to be Lillian's bedroom, working on a commission, a children's book illustration of a fairy garden. The scratching came from above, in the attic. Slow, deliberate sounds like fingernails on wood. I assumed it was mice. Old houses have mice. I made a mental note to buy traps and kept working. That's when I heard the knocking. 3 sharp raps on the front door. Pause. 3 more. I glanced at my phone. 3:09 a.m. Who the hell visits at 3:09 in the morning? I crept downstairs, my bare feet, silent on the cold hardwood. The house felt different at night, larger somehow, with shadows that seemed to move independently of any light source. I peered through the peephole, but saw nothing except the snow falling in thick, lazy flakes. Hello? I called through the door. Silence. The pattern goes back to the 1940s, he told me. A traveling nanny who worked for wealthy families. She'd earn their trust, then disappear with one of the children. But here's the thing. I don't think she was kidnapping them. What do you mean? I think she was collecting them, keeping them somewhere. And when she died, they got trapped, stuck between worlds, still waiting for her to fulfill her promise. What promise? To take care of them forever. To never leave them alone. My blood ran cold. Camden, where are you now? Actually, I'm driving up to Wisconsin. I want to investigate your aunt's house. Get some EV recordings. The line went dead. I tried calling back, but the number was disconnected. That's when I got an email from Detective Ray Kellerman, retired from Butte, Montana. He'd seen my forum. Post. Miss Holloway. The email read, I investigated a string of deaths connected to your aunt's properties over the years. Different states, different decades, but always the same pattern. Tenants report strange activity and either die or disappear. I've been tracking this for 20 years. We need to meet. Detective Kellerman was in his 60s, grizzled and skeptical, but his eyes held the weight of too many unsolved cases. We met at a truck stop outside Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Your aunt owned properties all over the country, he told me. She'd buy a house, live there for a few years, then sell it and move on. But the houses, they stayed haunted. Every new owner reported the same things you're experiencing. He showed me a thick file filled with police reports, newspaper clippings, and missing person cases. Look at this, he said, pointing to a report from 1995. Family in Montana buys a house. From Lillian Holloway. 3 months later, their 8-year-old daughter disappears. Parents claim they heard knocking every night at 3:09 a.m. Children's voices asking for the babysitter. He flipped through more pages. 1982. Chicago. Young couple rents a basement apartment in a house formerly owned by Lillian. The husband disappears. Wife found dead 3 days later. Parent suicide. But the note just said she came for him. How many? I whispered that I can. Prove? 43 missing or dead over 5 decades. But I think there are more. A lot more. What do you think she did to them? The children? Kellerman's face was grim. I think she kept them. Somewhere. And when she died, their souls got anchored to her properties, still waiting for her to come back. But now they think you're her. That night, we stayed in a motel together. Kellerman barricaded the door and sat. By the window with his service weapon at 3:09 a.m., they came. The knocking was so loud it shook the walls. Dozens of small fists pounding on the door and windows. Babysitter. We know you're in there. You promised you'd never leave us. Come back. Come back and take care of us. Kellerman aimed his gun at the door. Stay back. But the voices only got louder. More desperate. Please, we've been waiting so long. It's dark here. It's so dark. We just want to go home. That's when I understood. These weren't malevolent spirits. They were children lost, frightened children who'd been promised safety and love, only to be trapped in darkness for decades. I'm not her. I called through the door, tears streaming down my face. I'm not the babysitter. She's gone. I waited another minute, then unlocked the door and opened it just a crack. The cold hit me like a slap, and I pulled my robe tighter. Nobody there. But in the snow, clearly visible under the porch light, were footprints. Small ones, child-sized. Barefoot, they led from the porch across the yard and disappeared into the field beyond. I slammed the door and locked it, my heart hammering. What kind of child walks barefoot in the snow at 3 a.m? And where were their parents? I called the sheriff's department, but the dispatcher said they couldn't send anyone out unless there was an actual emergency. Missing footprints in the snow didn't qualify. I didn't sleep that night. The next day, I drove into town and asked around. The woman at the hardware store, Mrs. Kowalski, gave me a strange look when I described what happened. You're staying in the Holloway place? She asked. It's my house now. My aunt left it to me. Mrs. Kowalski nodded slowly. Your aunt was a good woman. At that house. It has a history. What kind of history? She busied herself organizing screws and wouldn't meet my eyes. Just. Maybe. Get yourself a good security system. And don't answer the door after midnight. That evening, I installed a basic security camera pointed at the front door and another in the hallway. If someone was playing pranks, I'd catch them. The knocking came again at 3:09 a.m. Same pattern. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 more. This time I was ready. I grabbed my phone and crept to the door. Through the peephole, I could see my motion activated. Porch light was on, but the area appeared empty. Who's there? I called. A voice answered. Small, genderless, and heartbreakingly young. Is the babysitter home? My blood turned to ice water. What babysitter? There's no babysitter here. She's supposed to be here. We've been waiting. I grabbed my phone and started recording. Who are you? Where are your parents? But when I looked through the peephole again, there was nothing. Just those same small footprints in the snow. I checked my security footage the next morning. The hallway camera had captured something strange. My aunt's old rocking chair, which I'd left facing the wall, had turned around to face the stairs. The timestamp showed it happened at 3:11 a.m. The front door camera showed nothing but snow. Over the next week, things escalated. Drawers opened by themselves. My phone recorded hours of static every night between 3 and 4 a.m. I'd wake up to find my illustration supplies arranged in impossible patterns, colored pencils standing on their points, brushes balanced in perfect pyramids. And every night at 3:09, the knocking. Every night, the same voice. Is the babysitter home yet? I started sleeping with all the lights on. The breakthrough came when my UPS driver, Mac Torres, arrived with a package from my publisher. Mac was in his early 40s, built like a linebacker, with kind eyes and a slight Iowa accent. He'd been delivering to the house for years, he said, Back when my aunt still lived there. You look like hell, he observed, handing me the package. Must have looked as desperate as I felt, because I found myself telling him everything. To my surprise, he didn't laugh or suggest I see a therapist. There's old stories about this area, he said thoughtfully. Native burial grounds, pioneer families that disappeared. Never heard this particular one, but ... He studied my face. You want me to stick around tonight? See what happens? I nearly cried with relief. Would you? Mac arrived at 10 p.m. with a thermos of coffee and a baseball bat. We set up in the living room with a clear view of both the front door and the hallway. Tell me about your aunt, he said. I barely knew her. My mom's side of the family was ... complicated. Lillian was a spinster, never married, no kids. She worked as a nanny for wealthy families back in the day, traveled all over the country. Chicago, New Mexico, Montana, Florida. She only settled here in the 1980s. Mac nodded. She ever mention anything strange? Ghost stories? Local legends? Not to me. But then again, we weren't close ... at 3:09 a.m. We heard it. A knocking got Mac gripped his baseball. Bat tighter. I grabbed his arm. The voice came through the door, clearer than ever. Is the babysitter home? We've been waiting so long. There's no babysitter here. I called back, my voice shaking. She has to be. This is the sitter's house. Mac stood up. How many of you are there? A different voice answered, equally young. All of us. We're all here now. Then another. She promised she'd take care of us. And another. But she left us in the dark. The voices multiplied, overlapping. A chorus of children all asking the same thing. Where is the babysitter? Where did she go? Why did she leave us? Mac yanked open the door. The porch was empty, but the voices continued, now coming from inside the house. We spun around to see the rocking chair moving on its own, back and forth, back and forth. The voices seemed to be coming from it. She promised. The voices whispered in unison. She promised to take care of us forever. The rocking stopped abruptly. The house fell silent. Mac and I stared at each other. What the hell was that? He whispered. Before I could answer, we heard footsteps above us. Slow, deliberate footsteps across the bedroom floor. We crept upstairs, Mac leading with the bat. The attic access panel, which I was certain had been closed, was now open. A thin shaft of moonlight streamed down through it. Mac boosted me up to. Look inside. What I saw made me scream. The attic walls were covered in children's drawings, done in what looked like soot or charcoal. Stick figures holding hands in a circle. A woman in a long dress standing over small beds. And in the center of the ceiling, drawn in jagged black lines, was a hanging figure, an adult woman with X's for eyes. Below the drawing, scratched into the wooden beam, were words, "The sitter keeps you as forever." I dropped down, shaking. We need to leave, I whispered. Now. But Mac was staring at something on the floor. A child's mitten, bright red. It definitely hadn't been there before. As we watched, it began too. Smoke. The smell was sickly sweet, like burnt sugar. We grabbed my keys and ran. I drove us to a motel in town, but I couldn't stop shaking. Mac called a friend of his, Dr. June Arnett, a retired child psychologist who now lived in Albuquerque. He put her on speaker, described the voices again. She said after hearing our story. I told her about the knocking pattern, the requests for the babysitter, the way they all spoke in unison. At the end, Dr. Arnett was quiet for a long moment. I worked with trauma cases for 30 years, she finally said. Children who claimed to see things, to hear voices. Most of it was explainable abuse, neglect, psychological breaks. But there was one case. She paused. Go on, Mac urged. 1987. A little girl in New Mexico, brought in by foster parents. She claimed she was being visited by other children who told her about the sitter's house. She described the same knocking pattern you mentioned, 3 and 3. She said the children were looking for a woman who promised to take care of them but disappeared. I thought it was a trauma response from her own abandonment issues. But what? She knew things. Details about missing children from decades earlier, from different states. Children who disappeared while in the care of traveling nannies. Children whose bodies were never found. My mouth went dry. How many children? Dozens. Maybe more. The cases spanned from the 1940s to the 1970s. Different cities, different families, but always the same pattern. A nanny would be hired, work for a few months, then disappear along with one of the children. The authorities assumed it was kidnapping, but the children were never found. Neither dead nor alive. Mac leaned forward. What happened to the girl? The one who told you about this? She disappeared from her foster home 3 days after our session. Never found. I felt like I was going to be sick. Dr. Arnett, my Aunt Lillian. She worked as a nanny. Traveled all over the country for decades. The silence on the phone was deafening. What was her full name? Dr. Arnett asked quietly. Lillian Rose Holloway. Oh my God. I remember that name. It was in the files, mentioned by multiple families. A nanny who came highly recommended, always with glowing references. But when investigators tried to track down the families who supposedly gave those references, they didn't exist. I finished. Lena, you need to get as far away from that house as possible. But it was too late. Even at the motel, they found me. 3:09 a.m. Knocking on the door. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 more. Is the babysitter home yet? I called Dr. Arnett, sobbing. They followed me. How did they follow me? It's not about the house, she said, her voice strained. It's about you. You're her family, her blood. They think you're her. What do they want? What they've always wanted. For her to keep her promise. To take care of them forever. I hung up and called Mac, but his phone went straight to voicemail. Then I tried calling Dr. Arnett back. Nurse answered. Dr. Arnett was admitted to our psychiatric facility yesterday evening. She's not speaking. Just keeps repeating the same 3 words. The sitter's home. I grabbed my keys and ran to my car. I had to get away. I had to find somewhere they couldn't follow. But as I drove through the night, I realized the truth. There was nowhere to run. At every gas station, every rest stop, every 24-hour diner, I heard them. The knocking. The voices. Is the babysitter home yet? I found an online forum about paranormal experiences and posted my story. Within hours, I had a private message from someone called Camden_Ghost Hunter. I know what you're dealing with, the message read. I investigated a similar case in Tallahassee, an old Catholic school that was shut down in 1961. Kids reported seeing the sitter who promised to take care of them forever. 7 children disappeared. The building was demolished, but the reports never stopped. Every 7 years, someone in town claims to see the children. Always at 3:09 a.m. Always asking for the sitter. I called the number he provided. Camden was 17, young and eager, but he'd done his research. No, the voices became a wail. She promised. She promised forever. I'm sorry, I sobbed. I'm so sorry she left you. The knocking stopped. For a moment, there was only silence. Then, quietly, a single voice spoke. Will you help us find the way home? Before I could answer, Kellerman's gun went off. I spun around to see him standing rigid, his eyes wide, and UNSEEING. Ray, what? He turned the gun on himself. Don't let her take you too, he whispered. The shot echoed through the night. I found his note the next morning. written in shaky handwriting. The children aren't the enemy. She is. She's still collecting, still keeping them, still hungry for more. Don't let her use you to feed. I understood then. Aunt Lillian wasn't gone. She was still out there, in whatever dark place she'd taken the children. And she was using their voices, their desperation, to lure new victims. The children knocking at my door weren't asking for help. They were bait. Now I live in my car. I never stay in one place more than a few hours. I sleep during the day and drive at night, always moving, always running. But it doesn't matter. At 3:09 a.m., no matter where I am, I hear them. The knocking. The voices. And sometimes, just sometimes, I hear her voice to Aunt Lillian, whispering promises of safety and care. Come home, Lena, she says. Come home and help me take care of the children. Forever and ever and ever. I know now that there's no escape. The children will keep following me, and eventually I'll be too tired to run, too desperate for peace to resist. And when that day comes, I'll open the door, I'll let them in, and I'll become the babysitter they've been looking for all along. The knocking has started again. I can hear them outside my car. Is the babysitter home yet? God help me. I think I'm about to find out.